The Chosen, the first ever multi-season show about the life of Christ, has officially wrapped up its third season out of 7, and so today we're going to stop and rank all 3 of these seasons so far from the good to the great. Hello everybody, my name is Eli Hollingsworth, and as always, welcome back to Against the Current, The Chosen YouTube channel, where we talk about everything relating to The Chosen TV series. We all love the show, and if you love the show, then be sure to leave a comment down below on something you love about it, and share your ranking of all 3 seasons of The Chosen TV series. Today, we're going to be ranking all 3 seasons. I want to start into these ranking videos, doing videos about just kind of putting in order my favorite things about the show. We're going to be ranking the disciples, ranking the characters, doing some other types of rankings, seasons, ranking each individual episode, which is going to be a longer one, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. But this video is just a kind of a light start off to the series that I'd like to do of rankings. So if you do like this series, this video, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe to Against the Current, The Chosen YouTube channel if you haven't already. But with that said, let's go ahead and start with the season that takes last place of my ranking is Season 2 of The Chosen. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with this season. I personally think it was a little clunky, the storytelling, the way, you get into the back half of the season, just kind of how it, after episode like 5, 6, 7, as it moves into 8, I do think is a little bit clunky. I feel like the storytelling there could have been handled a little bit differently, and just kind of a weird kind of way to set up the finale. But overall, this is still a fantastic season. There's not a bad season of The Chosen. There's not even a bad episode of the. Okay, maybe season 2, episode 7. I'm just kidding. There's not even a bad episode of the show. There's not even a bad scene or a bad moment or a bad frame even of the show. It's all is pretty great, but something has to take last place, and it has to unfortunately be Season 2. I know some of you may love this show. We get a lot of great moments in this season. We get the calling of Nathaniel, Philip, Judas, a lot of other cool, great disciples, and there's a lot of cool moments in this season. We have the backslide of Mary Magdalene and the redemption of Mary Magdalene, and she never really fell away. Okay, there's a more specific way to word that, but I'm not going to here. But there's a lot of great moments in this season, and there's a lot of cool aspects about it. It's just, compared to the other seasons, it just happens to be my least favorite. Again, you may disagree, and again, feel free to share your ranking of each individual season down below. But, Season 2, there's some stuff in the back half that didn't 1,000% work for me, but overall, it's a great season. And it just has, it's continuing the first season, everything that was set up in the first season, all the themes, the tone, the vibe. But that brings us to our number 2 spot, which is The Chosen Season 1. The first season of the show is still one of the best. It has, it's the starting point for a lot of these character developments. We're introduced to most of our main cast here, Simon Peter, Mary Magdalene in the first episode, Matthew, Andrew, John, Big James, who, gets changed faces later, but is still the same character. We get a lot of our main cast here. Jesus as well, obviously. We have episode 3, Jesus Loves Little Children, which is a fantastic episode. There's a lot of great moments in this season. Not really anything that I have negative to say. We have Nicodemus. Nicodemus is a huge part of the show. One of my favorite parts of the show. Dallas has kind of teased a little bit that he might come back maybe in season 5 or something, but you lose a little bit of that in the second season, and I feel like in the second and third seasons they are kind of yearning for Nicodemus, because Eric Avari, who plays him, does such a great job, and I think it's just easy to forget how great of a job he did, and just kind of how much I've missed him in the show. Me personally, I've really missed Nicodemus' character, just because he's so well played, and he's such a complex person. But we get the introduction of Quintus and Gaius, and all of our main characters. Again, all of our main characters are introduced here. This is the first season, and it just really establishes the tone, the vibe, the aesthetic of the show, the way it's going to move forward, the ideas that are being presented, the storylines that they're going to develop, and it all does it in such a great way. And there's a lot of it doesn't have the weight of having to go bigger, having to go better. Season 2 is The Chosen. We're coming back for a second season. We got to do bigger. We got to do better. It doesn't have a lot of the season 3, face melting, giant stakes as we're moving closer and closer towards the crucifixion, which is going to be a very intense and very heartbreaking scene. It doesn't have a lot of the stakes or the weight of future seasons. Just kind of, spending time with these characters. Episode 3, Jesus loves little children, which I've mentioned before. Jesus is you're just spending time with Jesus, and you're just seeing his daily routine and seeing him as he's interacting with these kids, and you're seeing these kids' daily routine, and just kind of the first season is really hammering in this idea of seeing Jesus through the eyes of those who knew him. And it's just a really cool, it's a great kickoff to the show. It has, they filmed it in parts. They filmed it in episodes 1 through 4 and then episodes 5 through 8. They filmed it in parts because they didn't even know if they were going to have a multi-season show about the life of Christ, or even a whole first season of the life of Christ. But they ended up pulling it off, and it has a smaller budget, so it does have a little bit of a smaller feel to it, as opposed to the other seasons where the budget is obviously a little bit bigger, and you can see that in the production value. Things just get so much bigger. But a lot of times it is nice to just take a step back and to see a show that's made with maybe a little bit of a smaller budget as opposed to future seasons. But that kind of gives it a really distinct feel to it. And, you get the miracle of the fish, the calling of Simon Peter, which is still one of the most impactful moments in the show. A really great scene, great way that they handled that kind of a whole exchange. You see a lot of the Jesus just begin the turning the water to wine scene. Such a great scene and a great episode where you have Giovanni Cairo as Thaddeus giving this monologue as Jesus turns the water into wine. What a great scene and a great episode. There's a lot of great episodes here. This is, Nicodemus, which is also a super cool scene. John 3:16, one of the most popular Bible verse ever, is portrayed in this season. There's a lot of really great, really cool moments here. And not to say that there aren't any, there aren't any great moments in season 2. Season 2 still has a lot of those great moments, and it builds upon a lot of the great stuff that's established in this first season. It just, it's really nice to just go back to the beginning, look at where it all started. It's always kind of fun. And usually with a lot of shows, I have a lot of trouble going back to the first season and rewatching. Like, I don't rewatch shows very often at all, just because it's really hard for me to go back to the first season, go back to the beginning, and lose all the. I'm like, we lost all the progress that we made. We've made so much progress so far. I haven't rewatched The Mandalorian hardly at all. I love the show, but I don't really rewatch it. But it's always fun to go back to the beginning of The Chosen, and you can just see the beginnings of these characters and the beginnings of these ideas that Dallas and the writers are starting to develop, and just kind of how they're getting a plan on how to go with the show. Early experimental music ideas from Dan Hazeltine and Matt Nelson, the composers. These early ideas that they're kind of thinking about and establishing, and just kind of how the show is finding its footing and evolving and establishing the tone. It's just really cool. And it's really nice to go and always go back to the first season to see just kind of how the tone is established. But in first place, without a doubt, Season 3 of The Chosen, the biggest season yet. And again, as I said before, although it is nice to go back to when there aren't as big as the stakes or as big as the weight and the tension of having to go bigger, having to go better, Season 3 goes bigger and better, and it does everything that I expected from the season and so much more. You get the feeding of the 5,000, the walking on the water, but in order to lead up to all of that, first you got to have an episode 4, the disciples being sent out 2 by 2, in a really cool scene that's filmed in all black and white. You have episode 3, which was my favorite episode, until we got every other episode of season 3, which are all just super awesome. Episode 3, Physician, Heal Yourself, where Jesus goes back to Nazareth, and you're just spending the whole episode with Jesus, and just really learning, and really thinking about what Jesus would have been like, what his life would have been like, how his early years would have been like, as being the Messiah, the Savior of the world, but he was still 100% human. So how was he growing up, in his hometown of Nazareth, and how to get to the point to where when he came back as we see in the Bible, he was rejected, because if you know someone, right, and if you've known someone as a close friend, or maybe not even as close friend, as a kind of close friend, you kind of knew them, but not really, like you kind of knew them enough to where you maybe say hi at the mall or something, but not enough to where you go over to each other's house all the time, and then that person ended up becoming, a celebrity or something. or they claim that they're a celebrity and they were doing these super cool things, you'd be like, no, you're not. I know you. I've seen you as a human being who is flawed and who is like, you're shy, you're quiet, you make mistakes and all this stuff. I've seen you as that person. Whereas the rest of the world who sees you as maybe a celebrity, they haven't seen that. So you're like, that's not possible. I couldn't really see that. So you get a lot of that with these people who Jesus, growing up as a teen, and in his early years, they kind of portray him as being shy, humble, low to the ground, which is how he describes himself in the Bible. So it's no surprise that he would be this way. But they really portray him as these people are looking at him like, I know you, Jesus, and you're not really a like if I were to pick anyone to be a Messiah, I wouldn't pick you, because you're not a warrior, not a leader like even Jesus says in the episode. Maybe Lazarus would even be a better choice. And just really tackling these really complicated ideas about what it must have been like to be the Messiah. And in episode 5, you have the healing of Veronica and the introduction of Veronica, which is such a cool character. She was really cool. And to see her healed in episode 5 and the disciples all playing in the water at the end, such a cool episode. Also, one of my favorites of all time. Just every episode this season was so good. There was not a bad episode at all. And you have the relationship of Simon and Eden going under tension, and you really drag the audience through the mud. The audience is really dragged through the mud this season, and there's a lot of hard stuff to deal with, a lot of stuff that's really, really hard to watch on screen. You're watching your characters that we've loved, that we've seen since season 1, and they're evolving and they're growing and they're doing the work of the Lord, but they're really struggling to do it because it's a hard profession and life to live. So they're really going through all the hardships. They're going through all the emotions. You have Mary and Tamara's relationship evolving, and just so many great moments in this season. I mean, when you get to the finale, of course, you get the walking on water and the feeding of the 5,000 in the same episode, and just both scenes are so impactful, especially the walking on water sequence. Easily my favorite scene in the entire show. It's just so powerful as the resolution to this conflict between Simon and Eden, which has been so painful to watch for so many people. People are, oh, Eden's acting wrong. Oh, Simon's acting wrong, and maybe the truth is maybe a little bit of both were acting wrong, because we're all human and everyone does a little bit of wrong every once in a while. It's how you deal with your mistakes that really matters, because you're going to make them. But the resolution of this plot line is so powerful and so emotional and so impactful, and just the theme of this season, Psalm 77, come to me all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And the people who do come to Jesus, Barnaby and Shula in episode 6, they come to Jesus and they do find rest. And when Simon finally comes to Jesus and confronts him about why he hasn't been dealing with his issues, he's been solving arguments in the Decapolis, he's been doing all this stuff, and why isn't he dealing with his own disciple who gave up his entire life, everything to follow Jesus? Why isn't he dealing with his problems that are right here in front of him? And he comes to Jesus and confronts him about this, and he's confused and he's angry as Jesus is walking on the water doing this miracle that nobody's ever seen before. And Jesus says, come to me, you who are weary and heavy laden, I will give you rest. And Simon walks on the water, and he sinks because he has doubt, and he sees the wind and the waves, and he is afraid. And Jesus pulls him out of the water and says, oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? And in the context of the show, they don't say, why did you doubt my ability to keep you on the water or anything like that. Why did you doubt my reasoning for what I do? And Jesus says, I let people go hungry, but I do feed them. And it's just such a powerful scene, such a climactic resolution to this plot line, and such a beautiful plot line as well. And tying it in with King David writing Psalm 77. And it's just such a beautiful season, beautiful scenes all around. The music is really cool. There's a lot of experimental things done with the music, and just everything about the season is just so beautiful. And it's just the biggest face-melting-y list, thing that The Chosen's ever done. So it'll be interesting to see how Season 4 is going to try to top this one. But yeah, so there's my ranking of The Chosen, all 3 seasons so far. I hope you enjoyed watching my ranking, and if you did enjoy, then please leave a like and leave a comment down below. Tell me what you thought of this video, and if you want me to do more rankings of all the different things and what should I rank next. Leave all that good stuff down below in the comments. I'll see you in my next video where I'll be ranking the 12 disciples. So it'll be interesting for you guys to see which disciple is my favorite, which disciple is my least favorite. All of that in my next video, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Goodbye. I was one way.